I've already spoken a little bit about what this morning is about. It's one of the traditions we have here at Beacon, where we ask usually 3 people, triads show up everywhere, and to speak about their spiritual journey. Sometimes they've been UUs for a long time, sometimes for a short time. They come out of different religious traditions. Hopefully, among other things, it will spark conversation. But more than that, it's about us, how we grow from each other. So, our first presenter today is Harvey Meghan. He has been coming here to the Barn Church for 30 plus years. So Harvey, you come up.
Thanks, Wendy. Spiritual journeys start differently for all of us. Family backgrounds or religions often send us on a spiritual path that's chosen for us. Although both my parents were Jewish, the synagogue and Judaism did not play a significant role in the development of my moral compass. I began to discover my path in my youth by hearing stories about my family's history and through the relationships I enjoyed with the adults I most admired. Both sides of my family grew up in Russia. My paternal grandmother was an orphan raised by her grandparents. They were peasants that lived in a small village close to a local farming community. Because of their religion, they were not allowed to own land, so farming was not an option. To make ends meet, they split wood to make for shingles that was put on the local peasants' homes in the area. Life was hard with little social diversion and even less spiritual guidance. My grandmother shared stories of the old country, desperately cold winters without warm clothing. Being the only girl in a family of 2 older brothers, she slept on the oven, which took up a whole wall of her home. Not only did she have to contend with poverty, but the political situation would periodically become very difficult. When asked to be more specific, she would relate occasions when she and her brothers were chased across the fields, no doubt talking about the pogroms that occurred during harsh economic times. Little time to ponder spiritual ideas, but the hardships she endured and the courage she exhibited started me on my spiritual journey. Life's a struggle, she often said. And what I understood was that I should expect little and be grateful for what I had, even if it was only a place to sleep near an oven. Unfortunately, I know little about my maternal grandparents' lives before they immigrated to the U.S. My mother had 2 sisters and an older brother, Morty. When they settled in Detroit, my grandfather bought a horse and a buggy to gather scrap metal and abandoned household items. He would go out daily to collect these items and sort them in the evening into categories. He would resell the material to individuals or businesses to be refurbished or recycled and made into new products. After several years of working in the streets in this manner, he was able to purchase a truck. The truck enabled him to travel to other areas of the city, this increasing his business. As a young boy, my Uncle Morty accompanied him and became part of the business. Again, little time for spirituality, although he did become an observant Jew after his marriage later on. But the lessons from my mother's parents reinforced my understanding that life is a struggle and you do what you must to take care of your loved ones. Like a good UU, I have found value in many spiritual paths, but never embraced any particular philosophy. I believed a greater understanding of myself through interactions with others, recognizing the importance of developing relationships with people I believed had something to teach me and something I needed to learn. Respect for others, personal responsibility, and empathy are some of the values I've gained from important relationships that have helped me establish my spiritual compass, providing a guide for my spiritual odyssey. Maitland Moore was the father of my dearest friend, Paul. Maitland grew up in Sault Ste. Marie. His family had a small grocery store in the city, which after graduating from college, he helped to maintain. However, the Depression hit and the family business was forced to close, forcing Maitland to find new employment. He landed on a job that he worked at for 7 years in the Sioux. As a graduate of U of M, Mr. Moore was dissatisfied with his work for financial reasons and for his constant treatment as an underling. Mr. Moore and his wife decided to move to Huntington Woods, where he became a salesman for an advertising firm, and where I met his son, Paul. Maitland presented himself as a very straight-laced, formal gentleman. His shirt was always buttoned up to the top, even on the hottest days. He always wore brogue shoes and never left the house without a tie. He was generally aloof to strangers and distant to neighbors. As a father, he was demanding and uncompromising. Maitland was a little older than most of the dads on the block, and to most of the kids, he was known as Old Man Moore. His relationship with Paul was quite contentious and fraught with anger. Paul and I had been friends for a number of years, but our relationship was firmly cemented when Paul broke his leg in the 7th grade and I became his helpmate, assisting him in school and carrying his books when we walked to school and home. This close relationship allowed me to get greater contact with Paul and also Maitland, his father. As a 12-year-old, I had many doubts about and questions about myself and the world around me. My own father could be distant, withdrawn, and inattentive to my own needs. I had uncomfortable feelings about changes in my body and emotions that I was developing as a 12-year-old. Talking to my parents was not an option. These feelings led me to question my own identity and self-worth. When first visiting the Moore family, Mrs. Moore would usher me in and I would wait for Paul to appear. At this time, Mr. Moore would be seated in the den reading the newspaper or book. Over the course of many visits, Mr. Moore would invite me into the den and we would sit, and he would be sitting in his red leather chair and I would sit in the crochet desk chair. His first invitation was quite a surprise. But over time, this became routine behavior. Paul's dad would ask me questions about myself and how I was doing. School, Tiger baseball, current events were always topics of conversation. He seemed sincerely interested in what I had to say and the opinions I voiced. In turn, I felt comfortable asking him about his work and what local businesses he called on. Life in the Sioux was a topic we talked about often, and he seemed to revel in talking about his own youth. On reflection, I realized how important these conversations were to me. Mr. Moore was the first adult to show interest in me and an appreciation of the person that I was becoming. Because of the respect he showed me of being a good listener, soliciting my opinions, and considering my thoughts, I felt that, too, I deserved respect. Through these interactions, I learned the importance of being respectful to others. Respect is a two-way street. We need to respect others if we are to be respected by them. This awareness affected my professional life as a teacher and obviously as my personal life. It also made me aware of the dangers of being critical of others and the benefits of looking for the good in everyone. Another person that had a great impact on me was my uncle, Morning Cone. Watching him, I learned life lessons of responsibility, loyalty to family, and kindness to others. As I mentioned previously, my uncle was involved in the scrap metal business, which he started with my grandfather using a horse and buggy. My uncle continued in the business after my grandfather died at an early age. Not only did he continue the business, but he became head of the household, taking care of my grandmother and his 3 younger sisters. His business prospered, and after a while, he was able to purchase a home for himself and my grandmother. Although he was an earnest businessman involved in a profession that was physically demanding and required working in deplorable conditions, He maintained appearance of elegance. When arriving home, he always took off his clothes off in the foyer. He would go directly to the shower to prepare for dinner, which was being cooked by my grandmother. Morty had bi-weekly nail appointments, which also included a hair trim. I remember sleeping over at the home he shared with my grandmother and absorbing the scent of Barbasol shaving cream and cologne that would fill the house as he prepared to go out for the evening. Passing by the bathroom, I would peer in to see my uncle tidying himself in the mirror, dressed in a raw silk sport jacket and matching trousers. In preparation for the evening, he was sure to polish his shoes that were lined up in his closet. He took on the role of a big brother and a caring son. He provided for my grandmother in every way after the death of my grandfather. And when my mother became ill, Morty was the first to offer assistance and was always available when she needed him. Not only cared for his sisters, he cared for his nieces and nephews as well. It was my uncle that took us to see the tigers and the lions. When I get together with my cousins, our conversations eventually focus on Uncle Morty. We all felt we were special in his eyes. We knew each of us was special because of Morty. Morty married my Aunt Alice when he was 45 years old. Alice had 3 boys that were incorporated into our family. My uncle afforded his stepsons the same privileges that we enjoyed, including regular visits to Olympia and Tiger Stadium. After he married, Morty insisted we have many family celebrations at his home. My Aunt Alice was a wonderful cook and a terrific hostess. Morty gave his extended family a feeling of security, importance, and understanding that we were special and that we were all loved just the same. It is in part due to Morty's influences that I join his stepson and cousins monthly to share memories and enjoy the company that the family provides. The self-respect he radiated was an inspiration. Even though he earned his living collecting discarded materials, Morty was in every sense a dandy and a positive role model for us all. But more importantly, Morty was the foundation that we all relied on. Recognition of how he stepped into the vacuum left by his father's untimely death, provided for his sisters until they married, and his mother until death took her away. My role in my family, my friendships, my church was shaped by the life my uncle lived. Self-respect comes from within. To care for those whose lives you touch is what I aspire to. To be dependable, reliable, provide strong foundation for my family is my way of honoring my uncle's life. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
The choir will now sing. No, the choir will not now sing. Our next presenter is Meghan, and I'm honestly not sure.
2012.
What's that?
2012.
And she's been coming here since 2012. Thank you. So, Meghan.
Recently, I was spending time with friends I hadn't seen in a long time, and one of them asked if I believed in God, as you do on a long car ride. And without hesitation, I answered yes. A second friend looked at me and asked, "Really?" "Yes," I replied. But the first friend asked, "What does that mean to you?" And I answered, God is the driving force of the universe. God fills the spaces between our atoms. God binds me to you. God is love. God transcends human existence and human comprehension, but also God is us. Is you, is me. He nodded. And the second friend said, oh, well, I believe that, but I wouldn't call it God. I don't know why not, and maybe that's why I come to Beacon. I was raised Catholic, and by that I don't mean we went to Mass on holidays or even just on Sundays. My whole extended family was Catholic, and it was my world. I went to Catholic schools from the time I was in kindergarten right through my first year of college. In grade school, all my friends were Catholic. My cousins went to Catholic school. Even when we moved, the friends across the street who went to public school were Catholic. For me and my family and my friends, life events were marked by sacraments, or holy rituals. Babies were baptized, kids had their first communion, young adults were confirmed, grown-ups got married, and when you died, it was in a church, with the church, and by the church. I was steeped in the tenets of the Catholic religion. Jesus is God. Do unto your neighbor as you'd have done unto you. And trust in the love and forgiveness of God. I learned those right alongside other beliefs, like the host and wine become Jesus' flesh and blood during the Eucharist, communion. That every person is tainted by original sin. That our souls that are taken into the afterlife will get their bodies back when Jesus comes in glory to judge the living and the dead. If I didn't understand one of those beliefs, then it was a sacred mystery. I didn't have to understand it, I just had to believe. Even now, none of those beliefs shock or confuse me. That's just Catholicism. Millions of people are Catholic, and it must make sense to them. Presumably, they believe it. But I don't. And maybe I never did. In my school, students were confirmed in 8th grade, meaning they accept Catholicism for themselves as an adult. And I remember telling Mrs. Knox that I wasn't sure I was ready to be confirmed. I wasn't sure that I wanted to be. She said that the whole class was studying confirmation in religion this year, and if I didn't get confirmed, what else would I do? I got the idea that I should just go along. But I did put a little asterisk, a disclaimer in the front of my confirmation booklet that I was doing this under duress. As I got older, I was an altar server, a lector, and a Eucharistic minister. I taught Sunday school. I sometimes attended Mass by myself. I wanted to take religion seriously. I did take it seriously. And yet, despite my trying, I got to the point where I was no longer comfortable calling myself Catholic. I wrote a letter to my parents saying that I would still go to Mass with them, but I wasn't going to take communion anymore. I was listening when Deacon Charlie said, "You can't be a pick and choose Catholic." So I couldn't be Catholic. And my father was hurt, and my mother told me that rejecting Catholicism felt like a rejection of them and of our family. The first time I gave this talk in 2013, they were here in the congregation, and it was hard, even in my 30s, to say in front of them that Catholicism wasn't for me. And I do still consider myself culturally Catholic, and some things must have stuck. I believe in the power of forgiveness and the possibility of redemption for all people. I believe that Jesus had and has lessons to teach. I believe in a life after this one. On the occasions I attend Catholic Mass, I can always take something away, and I happily receive a blessing. I'm sure that my upbringing and the anchoring role that the church played in my life is part of what led me later in life to seek a church that would hold me for who I am now and all the time. When people ask what led us to church, I usually say that we started coming when Haley, who is my stepdaughter, who is now 18, came home from school and said some little girl told her she was going to hell because she wasn't Christian, or something like that. It's a little fuzzy now. Well, clearly that was nonsense, and we said, well, we don't believe in hell. There is no hell, so you can't go there. Don't worry. And while the assurances of two very capable parents should be enough, we thought perhaps we'd do better raising the kind of child we hoped for with a community behind us. We looked briefly and came to Emerson, now Beacon, in 2012. And a whole nother child, and 11, 12 years later, we're still here. It's not always easy. Oscar often asks on Sunday morning, do we have to go? And why? Why do we have to go? Why do we have to go? Wouldn't it be easier to stay home? It would. Stats say that less than half of millennials regularly attend church. And I am something of an outlier among my own siblings, my coworkers, and friends, besides the ones I've met here at Beacon, in attending a church regularly, but not a Christian church. And most days, I feel like I'm trying to keep my head above water. Is there food in the fridge? Has the dog been out? Is the uniform clean and can we find it? Have I met my obligations? It would be easier to stay home. I am hanging on to the idea of myself as a spiritual person. But these days, I am less concerned with defining what I believe and more interested in figuring out how my values inform the way I move through the world. I come to Beacon because clarity doesn't come from complacency. The hour per week I spend at Beacon is an investment. I invest in myself, in my child, in my community, with you. I am sure as I age and grow, my relationship to the divine and my fellow humans will continue to evolve. I know Beacon will be here for me as I do. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next presenter is Richard Mahalski. And it's not Mikulski, that's the Jew. Harvey and I have been pronouncing it that way. Mahalski.
Good morning. Once again, my name is Dick Mahalski, and after hearing Meghan, we have a lot in common, Meghan. When asked to review my journey in faith, I recently read a book by Brian McLaren. It's called Faith After Doubt, and it very clearly, in my mind, explained the faith journey that not only myself, but many people are doing. Some of you may have read the book. Some of you have gone on a similar journey that I'm about to explain. In the book, he says people that are on a faith journey go through 4 phases. They start with simplicity, and then it moves to complexity, and then perplexity, and then finally harmony. So I'll walk you through each of those 4 phases that I went through as I that brought me to Beacon. First of all, I like Meghan, had 12 years of Catholic education, 8 years grade school, 4 years in high school, and it was a foundational setting. I appreciate that training immensely, but it was a place to begin. For a period of time, I wanted to be a priest, but then I realized I liked girls too much that wasn't going to cut it. So, but during this foundational or simplicity phase, the teachings were kind of like, faith was a total acceptance of the teachings. There was a rejection of other teachings, and it was like, it was faith with certainty, which to me is an oxymoron. I mean, if there aren't some doubts, it can't be faith. If, you know, it's like the two are incompatible with one another. But that was what I grew up with. So I went from the simplicity stage to the complexity stage when I went away to college. When I started to see that other people's perspectives, religions, outlooks on life weren't bad. I mean, in the foundational and simplicity phase, it was like, if you weren't Catholic, you were going to hell. I mean, that was like the way it was. And so in the complexity stage, I got outside my bubble, the bubble. During that phase, I did meet my wife, Loretta, and we did share a common Catholic faith, which for me, that was one of the attractions that brought me to her, and that was a bond that really helped us maintain our love throughout life. But our faith changed, both of our faith changed slightly during our married life, but we always held that bond that held us together throughout life, during good times and bad. In not only the simplicity phase, but the complexity phase, there always were doubts. There were things like, Meghan, I really wasn't ready to sign that confirmation thing. You know, I mean, a lot of similarities, Meghan. But I always questioned some of the Catholic Christian fundamentals and dogma. Now, I do believe that there is a God, a supreme being, and one of the things that I encountered in life that reinforced that was when I was away at graduate school at MIT, I was required to take an advanced mathematics class. And in this mathematics class, there were these, I mean, I'll tell you, I didn't understand much of this advanced mathematics because that was ME, and some of these guys and gals that I was in the class with were people that were going on for astrophysics and all kinds of really deep stuff. But the fact that mathematics can describe the complexities and the beauty and define kind of like the logos or the innate understanding and beauty in the things around us. The fact that mathematics can describe that, I consider mathematics the language of God. And that's why I do believe there is a God or a supreme being, because of that experience and other experiences. But that's one of the main reasons I believe in a God. The thing that brought me or took me from the complexity phase to the perplexity phase was when my wife passed away. My wife passed away on Christmas Eve 2020, and prior to her passing, she knew she was passing. We talked about what she wanted for the funeral service, and we wanted to have a Catholic service. But when we went and talked to the pastor, oh, by the way, I had been a member of the parish council at my parish for 3 years in the 90s, so I was steeped in the Catholic tradition. But when Loretta passed, the pastor, he was more concerned about following the rules than meeting the emotional needs of my family and me. And it was like love wasn't part of the deal. It was, hey, just these are the things you had to do, and or couldn't do at the Mass. And this was in the height of COVID, so there was going to be a small group of people. And anyway, that was the thing that drove me from the, hey, this isn't the path this isn't the journey that I'm destined for. So that was a difficult time, struggling with Loretta's passing and the potential loss of faith, and as Meghan mentioned, the pressure from friends and relatives who had been steeped in the Catholic faith. It was difficult. I mean, it was a difficult time to move away from that. So a search began for me. I began to do research, and before I threw in the towel, so to speak, I went to I wanted to see a Capuchin friar at the Washington, the Capuchin Center there in Washington, beautiful place. And so I talked to the friar, and I asked him, explained to him the situation, and his solution was find another church, find another pastor. And for me, that wasn't enough, because the faith tradition needed to be more than a personality. It needed to be someone who, a tradition that was more holistic and meaningful than any one individual. So that kind of drove me on a journey of, okay, what next? So I began to I read a lot of books, watched YouTubes, and I'll list a number of folks that I had, books and stuff that I had read through the years. It was Michael Singer, Father Richard Rohr, who really was Catholic, was outstanding. So, I mean, I absolutely loved his teachings. Bishop Shelby Spong, Brian McLaren, as I mentioned in the book that I referenced earlier. Going back to the Middle Ages, there's Meister Eckhart, the Buddhist teachings, even going further back in time, Plotinus and Pseudo-Dionysius, the Hindu teachings, Buddhist teachings, the Jewish teachings. And the conclusion from all that for me was there are multiple paths for spiritual enlightenment. And the common elements, as Wendy had pointed out earlier with her slides, were common elements for all of them were love and compassion, regardless of what tradition it was. However, their religions, the dogma, the rules, often drove a lack of acceptance of other people. I mean, it was just exclusionary. Their dogmas and their practices did that. That's when I discovered Unitarian Universalism and its acceptance of all traditions, and for me it was key. The principles are consistent. The principles that Unitarian Universalism is based on were kind of who I was all my life, but I didn't know it. It was just the way that's what I probably should have been if I was, well, anyway. I found out about the congregation, and I learned that there was a member who was a member of this congregation. She has since passed, Alice Tumbulian. And I knew Alice, and I'll tell you, the switch went from not sure to full on when I met Alice, because she exemplified the kind of person I know I wanted to be. And she was just an example for the congregation and for humanity in general. So I watched a Zoom call. I watched the services here for almost 2 years, and I officially joined in February. And so that's my my move from perplexity to now what I consider now harmony. So in the situation I'm in now, I started off in the faith with certainty in the simplicity phase, but now I feel it's faith with ambiguity. And those two aren't incompatible with one another. And so the harmony phase, what's harmony? We have a beautiful choir, and what is harmony? Harmony is a bunch of different notes, alto, tenor, and individually they're beautiful, but when put together, they're more beautiful. And that's kind of like, I like metaphors and similes, and that's a beautiful, beautiful link to the congregation here, because we're all in it together. The other metaphor that metaphor I guess it would be, is when each of us individually have our own perspective on the existence of God, or what God is, and they're all different. Some may be atheists, but if you look at the colors on the glass below the shade, they're unique, and they're not really connected. They're frames between them. But when we meet together as a congregation, I'd like to think of this as, when we meet, the shade kind of blends and blurs the colors. And in fact, you can actually see, if you look at it closely, you can actually see some white in that shade that really isn't there in the lower one, when you're looking at the individual glass. And when you understand how a prism works, there's a white light that generates all the different elements. I think we are the different elements as we meet together. We hopefully gain a better understanding of the white light, what the one, whatever he or she or it is behind it is. As a congregation, we get a better understanding of that. And in closing, I'd just like to think that all of us, as we interact with one another, each of us becomes an example like Alice Tobolian was to me.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
that's it.
Thank you.